Okay, y'all, quick story time on how a ghost took a picture of me and then I was hospitalized soon after. Now, bear with me because I'm not a storyteller, but
this story scared me, and it's from Houston, Texas.
So this is the role that I played in experiencing a soul go to hell. I'm gonna try to keep this story.
Wait, someone being dragged to hell by real little.
Do something with it.
It's just money coming to me easily. Money coming in and needing me. Money coming in repeatedly. Money coming, it's just money coming. It's just money coming to me frequently. Money coming in to be with me. Money coming in secretly. Money coming, it's just money coming. It's just money coming to me easily. Money coming in and all day. Money coming in.
This story scared me, and it's from Houston, Texas. If you're scared of elevators,
Texas.
this is just gonna make you even more scared. So this guy works in construction in buildings in Houston, Texas. At around 6:15 in the morning, his boss sends him to the basement to get some stuff that they need. On the way to the elevator, he meets up with another coworker who also needs to go to the basement for other stuff. By the way, they're on the 19th floor. On the way down, the elevator stops on floor 6 and an older lady goes in there with them. This lady never looked at them or talked to them. She was just standing there waiting with them. And when the elevator got to the basement, the two men get off and she stays in the elevator. When the elevator went back up with the old lady, the guy turns to his coworker and says, "Isn't it weird that she just got on to go all the way down to the basement with us and is going back up?" His coworker gave him like the strangest look ever and was like, "What old lady?" So of course he was like, on the 6th floor where the elevator stopped. His coworker was like, "No one got on the elevator when it stopped on the 6th floor. I think you're still half asleep." He still can't figure out what the hell happened that day because he saw an old lady. He says that she looked like she was in her 70s get in that elevator. But he was also a little creeped out because at the time, this building was under construction. No one was living there. A 70-year-old was not working with them. So he's still like, who was this old lady? Can you imagine? You still have to work there and you still have to go in the elevator. No.
Hey y'all, welcome back to All Things Jenny. I'm Jenny and happy spooky Sunday to you all. Have you ever heard of someone being dragged to hell or a medium literally experiencing someone being dragged to hell by real little?
So this next story
Demon
comes in
trying
from
to
one
drag
of our
him to
YouTube
hell.
followers, Black Vortex Storm Chasers. My uncle told me a story about an incident that happened to him when he was around 17 years old. He lived in a small town in the Texas Panhandle, and he had a bedroom in the back of the house.
Texas,
On this
it's the second
particular
story.
night, he had gone to bed, but was having trouble getting to sleep. He was laying in bed, tossing and turning. Eventually he fell asleep, but he kept waking up because he was feeling like there was someone in his room. He got up a few times and turned on the light, but didn't see anyone. He said he finally shrugged it off and he blamed it on the Texas heat. He finally got comfortable again to doze off when he suddenly was woken up to someone violently pulling at his feet. He said that they were trying to pull him off the bed. He tried to scream, but he couldn't open his mouth because nothing would come out. He held onto his headboard, trying not to be pulled off his bed. He said all he could do was hold on. He then started to pray with all his might, and as soon as he did, it just stopped. It stopped as fast as it started. He jumped out of bed, turned on the light, and as he ran out the room to his mom's room, he told her what happened. That's when they noticed deep bruising around his ankles. His mom told him to pray because it could have been a demon sent by the devil himself to collect him. Needless to say, he never slept in that room again.
okay, y'all, quick story time on how a ghost took a picture of me and then I was hospitalized soon after. Now, bear with me because I'm not a storyteller, but I have a lot of stories to tell, so I'm gonna try to get better with it. So this incident happened way over a decade ago. I was like 18, I'm 35 now. So I had this guy that I used to send pictures, like videos to, like of me dancing. He loved to see me dance, and he made music, and I used to always go to the studio with him and whatever. But he had tragically passed away in a car accident, right? So this one time after he had passed, I had made a video, like I was dancing. I don't like professionally dance, not like a stripper or something. I was at home. Imagine back then, my phone did not have a front camera, so I had to turn the phone around, prop it up so it could watch me dance. So I was dancing to Trina Look Back At It. I was twerking. Like, I don't even know why I was doing that. That's neither here nor there. I was young. So I'm dancing, like twerking. I'm killing, like, look back at it, girl, look back. So anyway, I go back to watch the video, and you know, I had to pick the phone up and watch the video. I wanted to make sure the angles was good and everything was popping. So behind me though, while I was dancing, my closet was ajar. So when I went to go watch the video back, I seen like something moving in the closet on the video, because I'm like, what the fuck? So then it took like a picture. It took like it was like a flash, but the silhouette was like a skull. So it was like dark right here. It was dark, but it was white, like a white shadowy figure. And I was like, am I tripping? And mind you, I was still staying with my mom. I think I was like 17, 18. I had just moved out when I was 18, so I had to be 17. So I'm like asking my mama, do she see it? And she like, I did just see that flash. And she like, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm like, what's going on? So I start going crazy. Not going crazy, but I couldn't believe it. I start asking everybody's opinions. So I stayed in the hood. And there was a place up the street where a lot of guys just stand there, but I knew them, they was cool or whatever. So I was asking a couple people, like, do you see this? So this one guy, he had a crush on me, and I'm like trying to show him the video, make sure I wasn't tripping. I'm like, listen, you gotta pay attention to the closet. Do not pay attention to me shaking my, because I had a fat ass back then. Don't pay attention to me. He's looking at the video, and I'm like, you see? He's like, oh wait, play it back, because I wasn't paying attention, because he was too busy looking at me dancing. I'm like, listen, you really have to pay attention to the closet. He's like, okay, let me do it again. And he look, and he's like, you gotta play it back real quick, because I wasn't paying attention. I got distracted. I'm like, listen, really? So he finally was like, damn, I do see it. It was like a little flash, like they took a picture of me. And the whole time I'm like, this gotta be Vernon. Like, this gotta be Vernon, the one who passed away that I used to be sending the videos to. I said, this gotta be him, because ain't no way. Like, that's crazy. And I didn't have no bad vibes at that time. So I asked at least 20 people, because I just could not get over it. And everybody, they witnessed it, and they seen the shadow, and they seen the flash. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I know I ain't tripping. So maybe like a week later or so, I had got this really, 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 really bad headache, to the point where I couldn't even see. I couldn't even open my eyes, and my head was throbbing. I always suffer from migraines, but this one was different. Like, I had to go to the hospital. Like, I could barely swallow. The light was bothering my eyes. And I'm like, something going on. So my friend at the time, he's still my friend to this day, and he a witness to the story too. He took me to the hospital. They admitted me. They diagnosed me with meningitis. It wasn't like the point where I'm losing limbs and stuff, but it was bad. So they had put all my stuff in those bags, you know, they put all your belongings in, those clear bags, those hospital bags. They put all my belongings in there. I wasn't even thinking about my phone, because I was in so much pain. And then they gave me like some morphine, so I was on 10. I was like high as fuck. I really didn't know what was going on, and he was there with me. So I think they had me in there for like 2 days. So when it was time for me to leave and I got better, my friend came and got me, and I'm like, where my phone at? And he like, I don't know. I'm like, what you mean you don't know? I was literally looking for my phone. My phone was gone. And I feel like it's a reason why, because I was just showing too many people what was going on with that video. And I'm like asking the nurses staff. I kept going back to the hospital, and I kept asking my friend, like, you sure you ain't taking my phone? But me, I'm cool. Like, I know he wouldn't do nothing like that ever, and we still cool to this day. He went up to the hospital every day. I'm like, somebody stole my phone. And I'm just like, it's not a coincidence that video that I got in that phone is evidence that phone disappeared. And I just didn't understand it. To this day, I don't know what's going on, but I wanted to tell that story. There's a lot of paranormal things happen to me. That's not the only thing. I also have a story time on where my mama was possessed by a demon, and I actually have footage of that. So if y'all want that video, definitely let me know. And there was witnesses there. My kids was there. We all witnessed it. And I also have a story time on how my brother, who passed away, we think he called us inside his urn, like his ashes. That's another one. And I have another one after that. Like, stuff be happening to me, and I'm like, I think I'm different, and that's okay. Everybody different. I'm not like a bad different, but I did want to let y'all know that my phone got stolen or disappeared after I exposed that there was a fucking ghost in my video taking a picture of me while I was dancing to Trina look back at it with my fat old booty right there. I had this long ponytail. Like, y'all know I used to wear the long donkey ponytails. I had an Aeropostale collar shirt on. It was purple. I had some plaid shorts that had purple, orange, and like brown in it. So like that was what we was wearing back then, and I was like, you know, getting it with my long ponytail, like feeling good, and that goes it just threw my whole vibe off after I watched my video back. But just tell me if y'all want another story time, and I got y'all.
Okay, I have another scary story for y'all, and this one is the creepiest that I've told so far. This story takes us to Mizzou, and there are three college girls who are on spring break, but they want to go to a party in the Ozarks. Evidently, this is supposed to be the biggest party of the year, and they obviously don't want to miss it. This is a real story? So the girls set out for the drive that afternoon. We'll say they leave at around 5 p.m., and they should make it to the Ozarks by about 8:30, 9 o'clock, just in time for this party. So as the girls are driving, it starts to get darker, and the weather takes a turn for the worse. To make it even worse, the driver at this point is now getting sleepy, and what was supposed to be a 3.5 hour drive appears to be taking closer to like 4 or 5 hours, which is weird because the girls had been down to the Ozarks before, and they knew the drive didn't take this long. Anyways, as they started to drive, the driver of the car starts getting sleepy and eventually does doze off a little bit, but not before her friends, the co-pilot, and the girl in the back seat shake her and tell her to wake up. Now, the driver is anxious to get to the party. She's feeling really anxious because the weather's starting to get bad, and honestly, she has been driving for a really long time at this point. So the friend in the back seat mentions that she's starving and how it would be nice to stop off and get something to eat. Now, the driver, again, is getting pretty anxious because, again, the weather's getting bad, and she's just got an off feeling, and she just wants to keep pressing forward. So she tells the girl in the back seat that they're almost there and they should just keep going. However, her co-pilot tells her that it might be nice to stop, freshen up for the party so she can look good, and to feed the girl in the back. But having driven that way many times before, the driver mentions how there's nothing to eat or nowhere to turn off on that stretch of the highway that they're on. So they drive a few more miles down the road when the co-pilot looks up and spots a billboard for a diner. And so she convinces the driver to just turn off the road for a little bit. They can take a bathroom break, refresh, and grab something to eat. And by this time, the driver is a little bit more anxious. Again, the weather is getting terrible at this point, and it's getting later and later, so it's dark and it's raining. But the driver obliged, and they take an exit off this highway towards this diner that they saw on the billboard. Now, as they're driving down this strip of road, they notice that there's no other cars on this road. On top of that, they notice that there's no street lights, and it's very dark out. Not to mention, it's pouring down rain at this point. So they're driving, and they can barely see when all of a sudden they get to a blockade that says road closed. Now, they just have a couple more miles to get to this diner, and they have to stop at this blockade. Now, while they're sitting there trying to figure out why the road is closed, there's a man who creeps up towards the vehicle, and he knocks on the driver's side window. And the girls all freak out in the vehicle because they're like, we don't know who this man is. There's literally nobody else on this road. And so they're freaked out, but they're trying to remain calm, and they're trying to figure out how to get out of there because, again, the road is closed. They can't get straight through. So they asked the man with the windows up if they can get to the diner. And the man was like, oh, there's nothing that you guys want down this road. And that creeps them out, and the driver of the car flips a very aggressive U-turn and speeds out of there. Luckily, the girls make it back to the main highway, and they decide that they're going straight to the Ozarks, no more stops. So as they're driving, the driver mentions how she's still feeling anxious and that if they stay out there any longer, they're going to get stuck in the mud. They keep driving. Her co-pilot and the backseat person are trying to reassure her things are going to be okay and that they should still be excited to get to this party. Anyways, as they're driving, things calm down a little, but the weather is still pretty bad, and this is when they approach yet another blockade. Much like the first blockade, this one forces them to stop completely. And the girls by this point are really frustrated, and they're starting to get really scared. And all of a sudden, they see something black moving towards them, and it's moving slowly towards the driver's side window. The girls at this point are absolutely terrified, and this is when a light clicks on. And once this light clicks on, it shines into the vehicle. And the girls, they scream because they're obviously scared. And this is when one of them is like, oh, it's a county sheriff. So the sheriff knocks on the window. He just wants to see what's in there. And he asks the girls if they're okay. But he does tell them that they need to turn around. So the girls are still scared, but they're curious about why the road is closed because this is the shortest route from A to B. And all they want to do is get to this party. So the officer explains to the girls that the reason the road was closed was because about 30 minutes beforehand, there was a major landslide. And this landslide covered 3 cars completely. He then goes on to tell the girls that had they been any earlier, they would have been one of the cars that were trapped in that landslide. Now hearing this, all 3 of the girls immediately got chills. And this is when one of them says out loud that she's really grateful that they tried to find that diner a couple of miles back. And after hearing this, the officer goes, "What diner?" And she goes, "The one that was on the billboard right off the highway." And the officer looks at the girls and he goes, "There is no diner a couple of miles back, and there's no billboards." Now at this point, the co-pilot, who is the one who had seen the billboard, is looking at him like he's crazy, and she insists that there was a billboard back there. And this is when the officer follows it up with this. He looks at the co-pilot and he tells her that he knows there's no billboards on this highway because billboards on this highway are illegal. There's none for miles. Like I mentioned, by this point, the girls are more spooked than anything, and they decide that they're just going to go home for the rest of the weekend. But as they're driving home, the driver realizes that the detour that they took to go find the diner took them exactly 30 minutes out of the way. The same 30 minutes that would have cost them their lives had they gone straight through. So this begs the question, what was the co-pilot seeing that night? Do you think it could have been a guardian angel? Do you think they were tired and might have seen something? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you guys are thinking, and I will see you guys in my next video.
Oh.
Okay, I have another scary story for y'all, and this one is the creepiest that I've told so far. This story takes us to Mizzou, and there are 3 college girls who are on spring break, but they want to go to a party in the Ozarks. Evidently, this is supposed to be the biggest party of the year, and they obviously don't want to miss it. So the girls set out for the drive that afternoon. We'll say they leave at around 5 p.m., and they should make it to the Ozarks by about 8:30, 9 o'clock, just in time for this party. So as the girls are driving, it starts to get darker, and the weather takes a turn for the worse. To make it even worse, the driver at this point is now getting sleepy, and what was supposed to be a 3.5 hour drive appears to be taking closer to like 4 or 5 hours, which is weird because the girls had been down to the Ozarks before, and they knew the drive didn't take this long. Anyways, as they started to drive, the driver of the car starts getting sleepy and eventually does doze off a little bit, but not before her friends, the co-pilot, and the girl in the back seat shake her and tell her to wake up. Now, the driver is anxious to get to the party. She's feeling really anxious because the weather's starting to get bad, and honestly, she has been driving for a really long time at this point. So the friend in the back seat mentions that she's starving and how it would be nice to stop off and get something to eat. Now, the driver, again, is getting pretty anxious because, again, the weather's getting bad, and she's just got an off feeling, and she just wants to keep pressing forward. So she tells the girl in the back seat that they're almost there and they should just keep going. However, her co-pilot tells her that it might be nice to stop, freshen up for the party so she can look good, and to feed the girl in the back. But having driven that way many times before, the driver mentions how there's nothing to eat or nowhere to turn off on that stretch of the highway that they're on. So they drive a few more miles down the road when the co-pilot looks up and spots a billboard for a diner. And so she convinces the driver to just turn off the road for a little bit. They can take a bathroom break, refresh, and grab something to eat. And by this time, the driver is a little bit more anxious. Again, the weather is getting terrible at this point, and it's getting later and later, so it's dark and it's raining. But the driver obliged, and they take an exit off this highway towards this diner that they saw on the billboard. Now, as they're driving down this strip of road, they notice that there's no other cars on this road. On top of that, they notice that there's no street lights, and it's very dark out. Not to mention, it's pouring down rain at this point.
So this is the role that I played in experiencing a soul go to hell. I'm gonna try to keep this story in one
which
video.
hell? Like real hell?
But this was high school years. This was around 2016, 2017. And
this is a real story?
She had this
I thought it was
right?
Drag Me to Hell, like the movie.
Eddie. So, her and Eddie had their own thing going on. I was kind of out of their business for real, until it started to get bad. He became a very, very toxic, overbearing boyfriend. He knew that we got out of school at like 3:15, so he would call her every day at 3:15 to make sure she was at her locker to get her shit to leave, like one of those kind of guys. He would blow her phone up hundreds of times a day while she's in school, while she's at work, while she's at home, while she's at practice, because he felt like she needed to answer the phone when he called her. And then when it came to friends, in our friend group, it was 3 girls and it was about 8 boys in this friend group. Majority of us went to school together. But these guys are really like our brothers. Like, we grew up with them a little bit for a few years. And once they noticed that he was basically harassing her, one of our friends decided to start picking up the phone. Well, actually, multiple of them. They're like, I'm picking up the phone. I'm going to answer because he's not going to keep harassing you, right? He would text her crazy things. He would call her crazy bitches, like all types of crazy stuff out his mouth. And my homeboys was like trying to stop it. They would answer the phone and they'd be, you know, playing games in this nigga face, basically, you know. And she didn't care after a certain point because she's like, fuck it. Like, this man is going to keep harassing me, right? So fast forward, he's still stalking her, right? I'm going to jump over a whole bunch of little altercations that they had. But in the end, he ended up passing away. And Eddie passed away because of a
What
cancer,
happened?
I believe. And she felt some type of way because he never told her that he was sick. And then she felt bad because she was like, maybe that's why he was being so fucking clingy with me, is because he knew that he was ill, but he didn't want to tell me that he was ill. But it was like she wasn't being a dismissive girlfriend. Like, she's a Leo. She was on that shit. But he really was just acting crazy. He ended up passing away from this illness, and it was bad. When he passed away, he called me, you know, she cried about it, everything like that. And then one day I was sitting on FaceTime with her, and, you know, she had her phone set up. She was doing her makeup and shit at her vanity. And I see this shadow of a head right here. So I'm like, at first I didn't say anything. At first I kept just looking at the camera, like, and she was like, bitch, why do you keep, like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, there's somebody standing behind you. It's a spirit standing behind you. She was straight like, oh, fuck no. No, I don't mess with demons.
Holy water.
Like, she's one of them. Like, as soon as you mention it, bitch, get out.
Water.
Get out now. And I started to realize that it was getting a little agitated, and that it kept, like, peeking around from behind her head and everything. And he kept trying to knock shit out her hand. And it was like, I started to pick it up more while I was sitting on FaceTime with her, and I could see his face, and I'm like, oh, the shape of it, like, that's the exact shape of his fucking head, like, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't tell her, I'm like, yeah, that's Eddie. That's I could tell, like, he's trying to knock shit out her hand and get her attention, and he's mad that he can't get her attention, right? Because I started getting a vision of, like, every time she would come into her room or she would grab stuff, he would be standing there in her room yelling at her, trying to get her attention, and she didn't see him. And he thought that she was just ignoring him. He didn't know he was dead either. He thought that she was just ignoring him. He even went as far as to try to grab her leg and pull her off the bed. But there's another medium who my best friend's godmother just so happens to be a medium, and she also told me that I'm a natural born medium and that I have more gifts than she had at my age. And at the time that we had met, she was in her later 40s and I was 20 years old.
16. Okay.
So, once I told my best friend what Eddie was doing in her house, she went and she talked to her godmother about it. Now, her godmother is a Christian medium. She's a prayer warrior, but she sees spirits. She sees spirits, she talks to spirits, she helps spirits, she does a lot of things in that area. Her areas are kind of different from mine, but she operates out of the Bible with what she's coming from. But we basically had to pull him out of the house and put him in her godmother's house, so he wouldn't try to keep haunting her, because it was starting to become oppressive, like the situation that I spoke about previously with one of my friends who passed away. Once we got him out of the house and we trapped him in her godmother's house, me and her godmother had to keep in contact with each other so we could make sure from both sides of the fence that this was being handled. I was getting a lot more intuitive downloads than she was. She was just able to see the spirits. She wasn't able to understand things about them. I get a lot of intuition when it comes to spirits, and I get downloads, and I get images and visions in my mind, and I get sounds, and I get noises, and I get smells, and I get all types of different impressions that basically make me kind of draw out a picture or a sentence to tell you what's going on. So she would have to ask me, like, where in the house does she go, and what does she have to do, and stuff like that. And then when she would see it, she would see it. So he's now in her house. He's now in her room. She has her daughter staying with her, grandbabies, his dogs in there, everything. So she locked him in her room. She told me she put up a protection to make sure that he cannot leave her room. But then he started to torment her. So she kept contacting me about it. He would keep her up all night, pacing in her room, and she would call me. He would sit up in her room crying in the corner, and she would call me because it would wake her up from her sleep, and then she would have to sit with him all night. And the more that she told him that he couldn't leave, the angrier that he got. And this was only about like a week's worth of shit happening. So we cut off his portal. He could not leave that room at all. He started to get increasingly angry because he kept trying to go to my best friend, and he couldn't. So in turn, Eddie started trying to destroy her godmother's room, trying to throw stuff around the room and everything like that. We would be sitting and talking about this shit all the time. And I did some protection and prayer for him and with him, and he did not want to hear that shit. He did not want to hear. He didn't give a fuck what I was talking about. He was honestly very rude and very disrespectful to me when I tried to help him figure out where he was and what he was doing. It was definitely given, I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. And I felt really bad because I'm like, sir, like, I'm trying to help you, right?
You're
he was just
gone.
worried about my best friend. So my best friend's godmother calls me one night, and she's boo-hoo crying on the phone, right? And I'm like, what's going on? She told me that she had prayed for Eddie, and that she talked to him, and that he still wasn't trying to understand that he was gone, that he had passed on. He wasn't trying to hear that. He thought that he was still here. He just couldn't understand how he was moving around, but he thought that she was just a random woman that locked him in her house. Like, he thought he was still alive. And she was really trying to get him to understand that he's gone and that he has to move on, and he was getting angrier every time she tried to tell him this because he didn't understand it. And ultimately, on the 7th day, when she called me and she was boo-hoo crying, she said, I couldn't help him. And I was like, what are you talking about? What happened? And she said, they took him. I said, who took him? The angels took him?
Who took him?
She said, no. And she started crying so fucking hard. She said, I tried to help him. I tried to tell him. I tried to get him to understand, but he's just so angry. He didn't want to understand. And I watched the demons come and drag him to hell. And there was nothing I could do about it.
Hey.
So this is the role that I played in experiencing a soul